Get started. So good morning. I'm Charla Robinson, the president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's information session with FedNor. I want to start by acknowledging that the city of Thunder Bay is built on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe peoples of Fort William First Nation, original signatories to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. And we recognize the significant contributions of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to our heritage, social, cultural, spiritual, and economic wealth. The Chamber of Commerce is committed to a relationship with Indigenous peoples that is grounded on the principles of mutual trust, respect, reciprocity, and collaboration in the spirit of reconciliation. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers today. Stacey Drombolis and Mohammad Narozi are initiatives officers with FedNor, and they're going to provide an overview of the new FedNor Regional Tariff Response Initiative. Following their presentation, we will open the floor for questions and discussions. Over to you, Mo.
Okay, thanks so much, Charla. Yeah, as Charla mentioned, Stacey and I are from the Federal Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario, and I find most of the time when I meet new clients, I spend a bit of time describing what FedNor is because not everyone knows who we are. So just in a big picture, FedNor's whole mandate is for job creation and economic growth in Northern Ontario, and that's anywhere north of Parry Sound and all the way west of the border past Kenora. Also when I'm talking with clients, I often, if it's private sector clients like businesses, I often get them to think of think of something you want to do to grow your business or somehow make your manufacturing more efficient, and it's definitely got a start and an end. That's probably a FedNor project. That could be something that we could support, and there's various programs that we have. I won't spend too much time talking today, but I think I'll introduce the Regional Tariff Response Initiative, RTRI, and that was just announced by the minister back in September. The whole point of that is to help businesses that have been affected by tariffs in one way or another. So either direct sales or through their supply chain or service costs that they have, and to help them towards adapting to that new climate based on tariffs that might be from the US or China or whichever country. So somehow tap into a new market or boost their productivity or catalyze growth, as you see on there. And I think, the other thing I'll mention about this program is that it's 3 years. So this will be the first year, and it's going until March 31st, 2028. And you know what? With that, Stacey, if you're cool with it, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mo. And it's so nice to see everyone this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to reiterate some of the key points Mo's pointed out already about this program, we're looking at the Regional Tariff Response Initiative, and we'll just be referring to it as RTRI for the purposes of efficiency throughout the meeting. But we know that a lot of businesses are feeling the effects of tariffs and ongoing trade uncertainty. So that's why this program was created. And the initiative is designed to help small and medium-sized businesses adapt and thrive, as Mo had explained. It can support businesses to become more competitive, whether that means improving efficiency, entering new markets, strengthening supply chains, or boosting domestic trade. So there are quite a few ways that this program is designed to support. It will be in effect, as Mo said, for 3 years. It has been backdated a little bit to March 21st, 2025. And again, as Mo had mentioned, running to March 31st, 2028. So it is a finite program, and it offers both non-repayable and repayable contributions. And those factors are dependent on the style of project and dollar value of the project. And we'll get into that in a little more detail further on into the presentation. The initiative aims to help respond to trade disruptions. So it really is about adapting and pivoting to our current conditions. and allowing businesses to grow despite what we're seeing happen in a global sphere. Just going to move to our next slide, forgive me. Okay. So another acronym that you'll likely see throughout this presentation is SME, and that just stands for small and medium-sized enterprises. So if you're a small or medium-sized enterprise, you may be eligible under the RTRI program. Priority sectors that this program is focusing on include steel, automotive, critical minerals, mining, forestry, clean technology, the bioeconomy, and agriculture. One important delineation to make is that for this specific program, those operating in the retail and tourism sector are not eligible. So we are not looking at those businesses currently for this specific initiative. The key that we'd be looking for an SME that's interested in applying is being able to demonstrate that tariffs or trade disruptions have affected your business. And this could be through increased cost, reduced sales, or other challenges caused by tariffs. In addition to that, we would be looking to see that there have been operations of the SME in Northern Ontario for over 3 years, that you would employ 5 or more full-time employees, and again, that this SME is operational in Northwestern Ontario. Projects will be assessed against other factors, including the company's role within the sector and its impacts on the region, managerial, technical, and operational capacity of the SME to obtain the project's listed objectives, and your plan to mitigate the negative effects of the tariffs on your business, to name a few. One other note that we'll make is that funding will be based on the minimum amount required to carry out the project. So as far as dollar values associated with repayable versus non-repayable, applicants who are successful would be eligible for reimbursement of up to 50% towards eligible costs of a project for a non-repayable threshold of up to $1 million. If we are looking at a project that would exceed that $1 million threshold, it would become a repayable contribution, and you would be eligible for reimbursement of up to 75% of eligible costs. For the repayable contributions that exceed that $1 million threshold, the terms of repayment would be determined during the development of the agreement. There also is stacking availability, meaning other government programs would be able to be included within the funders of a project. And that stacking limitation is 90% up to 100% for Indigenous businesses. All of this information is also available on the FedNor website, where the program is outlined in great detail, and we can certainly review that in the question and answer period as well if there's any components that we'd like to discuss in more detail. Okay. So if we're looking at the type of activities that can be supported under this program, there's quite a few different components that could be considered. An applicant could invest in technology like automation or digitization to make your operations more efficient. You might explore new markets through export development, market diagnostics, or customer diversification. And the initiative can also help strengthen existing partnerships, meet standards, or improve supply chain availability across Canada. Some projects may also involve bringing production back to the region, advancing research and development, or attracting skilled personnel. So a very broad scope and a very broad lens of what's eligible under this program. Trade or sector associations can contribute too, so things like offering training, advice, and tools to help manage costs or operational challenges through consultation. So a few examples just to give a better sense of what might be considered. A biotech firm could be looking to expand into new markets. A steel processor might buy new equipment to allow them to automate or increase productivity within an existing business. These examples are just very high level, but intended to give you a sense of how the program is designed to work. Under RTRI, costs incurred may be eligible as far back as March 21st, 2025, and that is assessed on a project-by-project basis. And to confirm which costs may be eligible, obviously we would need to get a better sense through an application or even an early on conversation with a FedNor officer about what project you may have in mind and the intended outcomes of that project. But we're really eager to have those conversations and support the development of these ideas. So please do reach out to us via email or telephone here in Thunder Bay or throughout the northern region. Okay. So if we're looking at next steps, and this sort of speaks to what we were talking about earlier as far as outreach, the first step in applying to the RTRI is to reach out to your FedNor regional office. At the conclusion of this call, I'll have both my email and Mo's email accessible, but there are several other fantastic officers in the region, and all of our contact information is very easily accessible on the FedNor website. If you are already a FedNor client, you can also contact your existing program officer for guidance if you have a more comfortable relationship there. If you're not a client, again, our contact information is available online. The program will be administered using a two-phased application process. The first phase, which is referred to as an initial application, requires some general information about your company, the project that you're looking to undertake, and you'll also be required to respond to some attestation-style questions related to the program. Once assessed, should you be invited to submit the second phase, which is referred to as a detailed application, you'll be required to provide more detail regarding the impacts of tariffs on your business, a forward-looking strategy that will include details on how the project will assist you establish new markets, as well as boost productivity. If you do decide to proceed with an application, you can submit it through the FedNor client portal. And again, this is all very easily accessible on our website, but our team is more than happy to support any access or submission issues that you may be experiencing using that portal. So for both phases of the application, it is highly recommended that you refer to the applicant guide, again, which is accessible on our website, to complete the applications and ensure to include all of the required supporting documents, including the evidence that we had previously noted. Missing information can delay the evaluation process while FedNor waits for those details. So as comprehensive as an application as you can submit really strengthens a project. And again, using those guidelines as well as leveraging on the support of an officer can really help bolster the efficacy of an application. And again, if you have any questions at any point, please do feel free to reach out to us, and our FedNor team is really happy to guide you through the process. Okay. So with that in mind, this slide provides sort of a high-level summary of some of the concepts that we've discussed so far. If everyone's comfortable, we'd be happy to open it up to a question and answer period or an opportunity for discussion, just with the disclaimer that if there are some questions that we're not able to answer directly on the call, we'd be more than happy to take it away and have a conversation offline as well. So with that in mind, Mo, anything to add before we open it up for conversation?
Sorry, that was fantastic. I think the only thing I forgot to mention from earlier, I'm not sure if you covered it, Stacey, is unfortunately we aren't covering retail or service sector employers, businesses in this program. If there is a manufacturing component to their operation, we could look at that, but just being careful. Like I forgot to mention that earlier, so I thought I'd mention it now.
That's okay. Thank you so much for that, Mo. And again, a conversation just to establish eligibility, very, very easy to have if there's any question or sort of ambiguity as to whether someone may be eligible for this program. I will mention that FedNor also has a fairly broad portfolio of programming. So if this program perhaps doesn't fit the needs of an SME, we'd still love to have a conversation about potential other programming that could be a fit for an applicant. So for the specific discussion about the RTRI today, those components are ineligible. But please do still reach out to us, as pathfinding is a major component of FedNor as well.
So if anybody has a question, feel free to just raise your hand. There is a button at the bottom that says react, and there is a raise hand option there. Please feel free to do that. While we're waiting for that, Stacey, could you just provide a little bit more clarity around what is defined as a small and medium enterprise? What I know you said 5 employees, but how high does it go?
I believe, and Mo, forgive me, I think the range is 5 to 500.
Yeah, that's right. Normally, but I think when we looked into that program, actually for that specific program, they didn't exactly define the upper range, which is kind of interesting where that fits in under. So yeah, that's where we're going with 5 to 500. But I guess to Stacey's point earlier, we're willing to talk to anyone that's affected.
Thanks, Mo. Rob Mozon, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. That was a great presentation. I was scrolling through the website while you were going through the presentation as well. Just a couple of clarifying questions. We say the project is expected to run until March 31st, 2028. Is there a committed pool of funding available and it's a first come, first served commitment type basis? Or will the program run to March 31st, regardless of how much participation takes place?
I'll start and then I'll defer to Mo. So my understanding, Rob, is that it would run to the end of the 3 years. Programs can become very heavily subscribed, but I think the intent is for this program to be accessible for that full term. The projects don't necessarily have to be running for that full 3 years. So if there's a project that an SME is looking to undertake that'll have an 8-month window or a 24-month window, those are all still very welcome and approachable. My thought is that the program would be accessible for those full 3 years. But again, I apologize that the oversubscription piece, I might ask Mo his thoughts on that. Sorry to put you on the spot, Mo.
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, to your question, Rob, you would have seen on the website there's $6.5 million committed across Canada. And then those are split into 3 fiscal years. So I think for this year, we had about $10 million to spend before the end of fiscal. But it might actually be lower than that, closer to 7. And then each fiscal year we'll have a certain amount to spend. And then something to keep in mind is some businesses will approach us with projects which span those 3 years as well. So even this far out, like if a project got approved this year, like it might be 500,000 or $1 million that's already committed from this pool of funding 3 years on, right? So it can become like the funding can become tapped, but each year has a certain amount of funding allotted to it, in case that's helpful.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Ben Fagan, go ahead.
Hi there. I have a couple questions about this program. One of them, like in the you mentioned some priority sectors, so like agriculture, for example, or clean tech, biotech. We fit it kind of into all three. Um, One of the questions I had about that is that whether or not uh capital costs, like if we're buying like in agriculture like tractors or we're indoor agriculture, so it'll be like thermal management equipment or things like that. Is that eligible under the RTRI eligibility criteria where our input costs on the capital side as opposed to the supply side are increasing? Because once we buy like the big equipment in agriculture and you noted it's a priority sector, there's very minimal like supply costs afterwards, like seeds, nutrients, like it's generally very low after your capital costs. So are capital costs included in the eligibility criteria for increases due to tariffs?
I'll go first, Mo, and then hand it over to you. So, Ben, capital costs would be eligible. I'll just put a little asterisk there, however, that it would have to be demonstrably tied to that positive economic result of pivoting to maneuver through tariff challenges. So, in the development of an application, you would just have to speak to in detail what the purchase of this equipment would allow your organization to do in order to mitigate the impacts of tariff. If that's helpful, it would
Yeah.
also have to just be demonstrated that it would not be a standard operational cost, as Mo had sort of mentioned earlier in the presentation. The FedNor style of program is intended to be very incremental, which usually capital purchases are, where it's sort of that one-time expense that would allow you to operate at a higher capacity, reach new markets, that sort of thing. So forgive me that without getting into too much specificity, we can certainly definitely take this online if you guys had something specific you were looking for. But the major takeaways is that yes, capital equipment purchase would be eligible with the condition that it's tied to mitigating tariff impacts and has strong economic outcomes. And we could talk about ways to frame that or kind of what you had in mind, putting it under that lens as well, if you wanted to approach us as well.
I guess
Sorry.
I guess the follow-up on this is I was more talking about trying to demonstrate impact of tariffs on our business because in the guidelines there are it provides some examples. And one of them, for example, is at least 25% of sales in the markets targeted by tariffs. And then it goes on to give an example that, for example, you have to have like a 25% reduction in sales to the US market because it's impacted by tariffs. And you can't like, so for example, we've seen like a more than a 25% drop in our sales within our region, but we've been working for 2.5 years on establishing a commercial kitchen to be able to sell internationally, which is essentially now collapsing in on itself because of the current tariff situation, but we don't have sales from it yet. And so under the eligibility criteria, it looks like we wouldn't qualify because we're not exporting to the States yet. And those sales therefore haven't been impacted, but we've been working on it for 2.5 years, right? And so that in combination with my question about capital costs were rather on the improving impact of tariffs on our business side, not on the what I intend to spend it on side. Does that make sense?
It does. So there's a variety of ways that we're looking at demonstrating those impacts. And Ben, forgive me, if I'm understanding correctly, I don't think the intent is that you would have to demonstrate a direct sales presence in the United States. We would just have to be able to see that through that general chain of tariff sort of rollout, for lack of a better term, that there's a distinct impact on your business operation, if that's helpful or provides more clarity.
Yeah, yes, absolutely it does. Because I've been like some brief conversations I've had have said that it needs to be very direct and it has to be US sales, and that's the only thing that qualifies you. And if you don't have that impact, then this isn't the program for you, kind of. And so I was like, how, like, so the impacts of tariffs are so much more broad than that, based off of the economic analysis by like Export Development Canada, for example. And agriculture is like the #1 listed industry impacted by the tariffs by Export Development Canada. So I fully agree with you. I'm just getting different responses depending on who I ask, I suppose.
I think what might be helpful, Ben, and if you're comfortable, we could set up a call and it can be very, very preliminary as well. And we can kind of go through some of the components that you're thinking of, seeing if we can get you some clarity on the best path forward, and getting a better sense of what the impacts that you're feeling are, so that you have some specificity. So if you're comfortable, I can reach out after this call and we can set up a meeting, even if it's not very specific to a project that you have in mind quite yet. We can go over those components and make sure you have some comfort there to take that away and start thinking about putting a project together.
Absolutely. I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Maureen, over to you.
Good morning. I had 2 questions. I'm working with 2 different clients that are interested in this. So for the first one, for the retail wholesale, if it's a sort of a retail client, but they're doing wholesale because of the response to tariffs, is there a certain percentage that they have to be able to prove that they're doing in the wholesale to be eligible?
You know, Maureen, and Mo, forgive me for jumping in. I'd love to take that away and speak with our policy team. I apologize that I don't have a figure as of yet. But if there is someone that does have that wholesale operation, we'd love to explore that. My initial hesitancy is whether or not they would continue doing that wholesale long term, or if it would sort of be a mitigation while they're being impacted and then would cease after the project. I think we may run into some complexity there. But I apologize that I can take that away and definitely get you some guidelines or framework on what would be appropriate there.
Perfect. This client would probably continue to do it. I just don't know what we need to prove as far as like percentage of actual business being wholesale. So I'll follow up with you after the call.
Yeah.
Another client is doing a new build, so building a completely new building for their operations. And we're impacted by tariffs to the point that now the construction bill, they haven't broken ground yet, has almost doubled because of imports. So like for the steel, for the everything for the construction, would a project like that be eligible at all?
We could certainly explore it, Maureen. I apologize that without having a little more detail on how they would be, I guess because they had begun sort of the development of the project, I would be curious on having a discussion about framing it in such a way that demonstrates pivoting and accessing new markets, specific to tariff relief. But Mo, forgive me for putting you on the spot, but what are your thoughts on what Maureen sort of outlined at a high level?
Yeah, you put it great. I just like you, Stacey, I'd have to look more specifically at that project to be able to answer that. It's hard to say on its face.
I think there might be something there, Maureen, and if we could even just have a chat with you indirectly that you could bring back to that client, if there's a few baseline metrics we could take off the call, I'd be happy to get that answer for you as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Great questions, everyone. Any more questions at this time? I know that the next slide Stacey's going to give us actually shows their contact information, so you can all write that down. and reach out directly for follow-up on specific questions. But are there any other questions based on what's been discussed so far? Seeing none, then thank you all for being at our information session today. I hope it's helpful, and certainly encourage everyone to reach out directly to Stacey or Mo to further discuss specific details and hopefully be able to get some guidance on how you can apply to take advantage of this amazing program to help to support our region. So thank you very much, Stacey and Mohammed, for all your work in putting this together. And I hope that your inbox is filled with lots of follow-up questions. We do have a second session happening tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Just wanted to make it clear that it is the same information session. We are just holding it at 2 different times to help to make it fit for folks' schedules. Also, we have recorded this session and we will be emailing out the recording to all participants so that you'll have it as a follow-up following the call. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Enjoy the sunshine and all the best. Take care.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thanks, everyone.